Okay, so I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, who will also be on Zoom. So our next speaker is Daria Torres, who was an undergraduate at UVA in systems engineering and went on to do an MS in systems engineering as well as an MBA at UPenn. She started her career as a systems engineer for Lockheed Martin and then moved into kind of the consulting space and eventually started the Wall Torres Group as her own consulting company. So I'm excited to hear about her experiences and hope you guys will have lots of questions for her at the end. So welcome, Daria.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I first would like to heartily thank Dean West and her team who worked to put together this event. Given that Women's History Month was just celebrated, I'm extremely proud that the engineering school has chosen to feature women in engineering through this symposium. So while I'm not in the room, I feel, as I said, it's a source of privilege, right, to be here with you today. I've been thinking a lot about this time that I was allotted and trying to put myself in your shoes, in your seats. I'm not a public figure. You've probably before today, most of you never heard of me before. But if you're like me, you believe that inspiration and insight can come from anywhere. So I do have a message for you today. And the theme is look deeper, look deeper. And I'm going to share 5 points using a few images, because I think pictures invoke our imaginations, our creativity, our emotions. So why don't we dive right in? So, of course, I had to start with this iconic view overlooking the rotunda and the lawn. Every Wahoo has walked along this stretch of grounds plenty of times. And here's a question I'd like you to consider. If you could zoom in and learn something new about any aspect of this picture, what you're seeing here, what would it be? That's the kind of question I ask myself all the time. If I could zoom in and learn more, where would I explore? What would I try to discover? And believe it or not, a UVA math professor had a lot to do with that. So I'll share with you, her name was Vera Granlund, and she was a legend at the E-School at UVA, both for her stern yet caring teaching style and her commitment to individualized student learning. I had her for Calc 2 and Calc 3, but I first met her during the summer bridge program that the engineering school hosted for underrepresented minority students to ease the transition to UVA. The transition to the immensity of the university, to the rigorous expectations. And I remember on the first day of that summer bridge class with her, which was really a speed review of basic calculus, she had us all one by one come up to the front of the class. And the only prompt she gave us was talk about anything you really enjoy for 1 minute. So that seems like it should have been easy. It was not. I got lockjaw and had to leave the room and then come back. There's so many directions you could go with something like that. I ended up talking about my love of lacrosse ultimately. But the point here is that as I asked with the picture, if you could zoom in and understand something new about any aspect of a person, or in this case of this picture, what might it be? And I think that's what Ms. Granlund was trying to bring out. She was showing us that she wanted to look deeper at us, and she wanted us to look deeper at each other. So on that first day of class, she could have spent the time giving us a pretest or running through some sort of review exercises. But no, she invited us to tap into our sense of wonder. So let me now share with you what I was wondering about as I considered looking deeper at this picture. This is a picture I've seen plenty of times before, maybe you too. But my eye this time went to the clock on the rotunda. I don't know anything about the clock. Maybe you do. I did not. So why not zoom in there? And I found something really interesting. Legend has it that in the earliest days of UVA, this clock had to have bulletproof hands. bulletproof. And the reason why is because students like to shoot at the hands of the clock with guns. And apparently maybe, or many of them rather, did this perhaps while they were riding horseback. So it was a quicker means of getaway, I presume. But if you look deeper, there's always insight there, right? This is the point, to be curious, remain curious, and keep your sense of wonder. And you follow that curiosity and explore that wonder until it leads you somewhere, just like it did with me preparing for this talk, saying, what new thing might I discover when I look at this picture of the rotunda and the lawn that I've seen so many times before, right? So back to Ms. Granlund for a second. She was curious about us. She wondered what made us tick, pun intended. We were more than just the calc problems that we could solve. And so engineers really wonder, and we have to remember to keep tapping into that. So I shared a little bit about my early experience at UVA in this summer bridge program, but let's rewind the clock a little bit further back, maybe a lot further back, actually. So this is embarrassing photo time. This is me, the first one, a couple months old, barely able to hold my head up. The second one, probably 4 or 5. I'm probably more snazzy here than I've ever been since. But why am I showing you these pictures? It's because a few weeks ago, as part of the recent 210th anniversary of the Girl Scouts, they ran a media campaign, right, to celebrate this milestone. And they interviewed me about my journey to entrepreneurship, from engineering to entrepreneurship. So I was active in the Girl Scouts as a child, and I'm a lifetime member now. And I've run a consulting practice, as you heard, focused on strategy, leadership, and governance for 17 years. Well, in this interview for the Girl Scout piece, the 2 points that I made about my foundation as an entrepreneur were, number 1, selling lots of cookies, and number 2, seeing my father acquire and manage rental properties while he was also working in a more traditional corporate job. It makes sense, right? Direct sales experience, me, and seeing an example, my father. Now, of course, there was a lot more to the interview, but afterwards, when I looked back at it and read it again, when I looked deeper, I said, there's something off here. Well, what is it? Well, the clue is in these pictures. Whose hands are wrapped around me in the picture to the left? Who dressed me in that snazzy little outfit in the picture on the right? My mom. She's the one that actually helped me sell all of those cookies. She made sure I got to my Girl Scout activities, sports, other extracurriculars, and she managed to do all of this as a working mom. She was also the reason why my dad was able to juggle so much at work and in his side gig. So the lesson here, number 2, is appreciate all of the contributors that got you to where you are. It's easy to have tunnel vision or recency bias, or plain and simple, just forget. But it's so important to look deeper and appreciate the different mentors, formal and informal, who helped you along the way, who shaped you. And I do believe that when you're more cognizant of these pivotal players in your life, the more likely it is that you will play that role for others. Because no one goes far alone. And what got you here will not get you there. So let's jump forward again. And I'll share 2 pictures from graduation day. On the left are my parents, Barbara, the mom appears now, Barbara and Lewis Walls. And on the right, I am shaking the hand of systems engineering professor and department chair at the time, Thomas Hutchinson. He was also my senior thesis advisor, very important role. And I actually have the original copy right here, submitted April 26, 1996, as a requirement for graduation. But let me tell you what Professor Hutchinson approved for the focus of my research. Before that, though, I have to tell you about the amazing device that he invented in the 1980s. It was called Erica. And it was one of the earliest accessibility or assistive technologies, sophisticated technologies to exist, whereby a user who did not have motor function or even verbal function, think ALS, stroke, they could have some degree of communication ability and control ability. And we had it right in Small Hall. So I don't know if it's still there or what has become of it, but I was fascinated by this technology and I wanted to leverage it in my research. So what did I propose to study when I pitched my idea to Professor Hutchinson? My hypothesis was that there might be some way to track the eyes of test takers, right? So Erica is eye gaze interface computer aid. A camera watched where your eyes moved, it monitored your pupillary response, and it translated that data while you're interacting with a graphical user interface, right? As this diagram shows here. But again, so my hypothesis was there might be a way to track the eyes of test takers, specifically while taking word association tests, to determine if there were any noticeable patterns that surfaced. And my speculation was that there might be unintended implicit bias built into the verbal section of standardized tests. And if that was the case, that you might see those differences in the eye response data across various demographics. So let me show you a mock-up of my assessment instrument, or what the graphical user interface looked like. Again, this is a mock-up, but I want you to imagine that you're the test taker. You're looking at this display. The Erica, or the representation of it here, you see the camera beneath the display, is there monitoring your eyes. And the test would have started by asking for some basic demographic inputs and providing you with some basic instructions. And then it would move on to the word association test. I'll just do one demo question here so you can see what the users saw. The keyword would first be shown, and it would appear for a few seconds. I'm giving you this example here of the keyword war. Then a few seconds after, the word would disappear and 3 new words would appear. Right? But before that happens, the Erica, right, the camera would be monitoring both pupillary dilation and eye movement. From that, you can detect stress level, the occurrence of distractions. And after that word disappears, what do? You then select with a mouse click which of the new related words are most closely associated with the first. And the user had to do this within a reasonable amount of time. Believe it or not, there are expected norms based on frequency distributions, but those lists and those stats did not account for subjective meaning and cultural considerations. So again, during this portion of the test, Erica could monitor pupil dilation, stress level, and things like how long does it take the user to select their answer? Was there another choice that they were considering before they made their ultimate selection? But here's the bottom line. Like Professor Granlund, Professor Hutchinson said, I want you to look deeper. Let's see what we find. So the third insight is hypothesize, speculate, have conviction that something may be true, and then retain the objectivity to be proven right or wrong. Since we're time bound here, I will not get into what my research revealed, but I will say that it was an honor to have the chance to work under Professor Hutchinson's guidance, and for him to provide the space and the freedom for me to look deeper at something that mattered to me. I made a prediction, and his technology allowed me to explore that. Before moving on, I will say this as well. My consulting practice has served both of the major standardized test producers, ETS and ACT, as clients. And I will say it was a very proud moment when I could share with them, executives, from each of these organizations, that my alma mater back in the mid-90s enabled me as a young Black woman to explore something as nuanced and as important as inequity in standardized testing in an evidence-based way as a systems engineering major. So, thank you again, Professor Hutchinson and Professor Granlund. And at this point, I think it's only fitting to take a moment to celebrate the lives of both professors that I've mentioned to this point. They truly did have a monumental impact on me. And one observation worth calling out here, since again, this is the Women in Engineering Symposium, the picture on the left was from 1997. Vera Granlund is front and center in the middle on the picture on the left. And this is the group of retiring faculty that year. I learned from her obituary that she was the first girl on her high school chess team in Bronxville, New York. She was the first woman at Stevens Institute of Technology to be awarded the National Science Foundation grant, or a National Science Foundation grant. And she taught for 19 years at UVA until she retired, as I said, in 97, 1 year after I graduated. So she was a pioneer, as was Professor Hutchinson. And again, I just count myself among the many lucky who learned from them. So at this point, I'd like to have us think a little bit about our journey as leaders and as people. And I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. As engineers, we operate based on facts and data and formulae, algorithms. But I'll tell you, getting anyone aligned with the solutions that emerge from all of that analysis requires authentic leadership. You've probably heard that term before, authentic leadership. And I want to break it down in two ways in how I understand it. So first, I once heard a retired general say that the root of earning trust as a leader is in the following question: does your audio match your video? Or said another way, does your video match your audio? Authentic leaders don't say one thing and then do another. Their actions match their words. They don't pay lip service to things. So even as engineers, perhaps especially as engineers, we can't say one thing and then do another. That erodes trust, and you will not get people aligned with your ideas to implement them or to embrace your solutions if your audio and video don't match. Second, we have to expand our arena. What is an arena? Well, let me share. Your arena is the upper left quadrant of this framework you see here called the Johari window. Why Johari? It's because the inventors of this were two guys by the names of Joseph Luft, and Harry Ingram. So let me explain what's going on here and how it relates to this idea of authentic leadership. Your main goal is to expand your arena, that upper left quadrant. Why should we be doing that? It's because that is what authentic leaders do, and it grows followership. How do you do this? Well, you can either expand your arena by closing blind spots, right, in the horizontal direction, or you can expand your arena by shrinking your facade, expanding in the vertical direction. So how do we close our blind spots? It's simple. We seek feedback. We look deeper at the perception that others have of us. What do they see that we don't see? What observations are they making that might be helpful to close a blind spot? And how do we shrink our facade? Again, simple. We disclose. We allow others to look deeper at us. I can tell you that in my journey, from systems engineer at Lockheed Martin to management consultant at McKinsey to founder of my own consulting firm to boardrooms and C-suites around the world, I do my best to show up as my full self everywhere. It takes too much energy to do anything else or to try to be something aligned with what others may want you to be. I also try to continuously express receptivity to the views and observations of others. That's how we learn and how we grow. And I know this is not new, but it's just a reinforcement of our need to stay open-minded. So to put a finer point on this fourth insight, I'll say, open up. Increase your appetite for feedback and your comfort with showing more of your true self. Final point, and this is going to be a quick one. I said at the outset of my remarks that I wish I could be there with you today, and I really did mean that. But as I had shared with Dean West, I will be making the trek down from New Jersey to Charlottesville 2 times this month. First, next weekend for Black Alumni Weekend, and then toward the end of the month for board meetings. I love UVA. The history is rich and complex. The experience you have here is rewarding and challenging. The relationships you form are diverse and dynamic. And that's why I want to stress that the last thing engineers should look deeply at is what you can offer. Offer your intelligence, offer your time, offer your presence, offer your energy, offer your talents, your resources, and offer your connections. Speaking of connections, let me share one last image and then I will recap. 2 of my favorite connections are shown in these pictures here during 2 of our many visits back to grounds. These guys right here are my sons, Devin and Javon. They love UVA almost as much as I do, which their dad, as a Lehigh University grad, tolerates pretty well, I'd say. But we really have had some wonderful times as a family on grounds and carrying out some traditions that started at UVA. In fact, during my time in the engineering school, I was an officer in UVA's engineering NSBE chapter, National Society of Black Engineers, progressing from secretary to ultimately president in my 4th year. And little known trivia fact, that is the year that UVA won National Chapter of the Year for NSBE, beating out hundreds of other chapters from across the country. I'm happy to share that my older son is kind of now carrying on that tradition. He's active as a treasurer in his NSBE chapter out on the West Coast, where he is double majoring in computer science at the USC Engineering School and business in the USC Marshall School. So I truly do look forward to continuing to offer what I can and to serving the community as a proud alumna. And I try to inspire that same spirit in others. So now to wrap up so that we have hopefully a few minutes if there are any questions, let me just restate the 5 points. First, wonder. Let your curiosity be your guide. Second, appreciate. You didn't get where you are by yourself, and that will always be true. Third, hypothesize. Think big about the future and what may be true, but allow the facts to dictate your ultimate conclusions. Fourth, open up. View all feedback as a gift and let others see the real you. Fifth, and finally, offer. Offer whatever you can, wherever and whenever those opportunities present. Last but not least, some of you may have already figured it out, but my little Easter egg buried in this talk, further reinforcing the need to look deeper. You got it, wahoo. As you look down this list of points, you'll see a true point of pride for me. I'm a wahoo for life. So wahoo wah, and thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Did you know that you always wanted to be an entrepreneur and go through engineering at the E-School?
That's an interesting one. I knew that I wanted to attend UVA as soon as I visited the campus for the first time. Did I always know I wanted to be an engineer? I perhaps wouldn't have been able to put words to it, but I knew as early as probably sophomore year in high school that I had that interest in solving problems, breaking things apart, putting them back together, facing, headstrong into complexity and ambiguity, and coming out on the other side with an answer. So I guess in a sense it's been deeply rooted for a long time. Yes. And I think once an engineer, always an engineer. Even if you pursue other courses of action, that mentality, those mindsets, those methodologies never leave you. And you apply them to the new places and applications that surface in whatever role you're in. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I'm not able to see anyone, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's happening, but I'm happy to field other questions. But I also know that you have another speaker left, Margaret Maddox. So I don't want to cut into her time either.
If you wouldn't mind, could you just give us a quick overview of what your senior thesis found out?
Yes. Well, so the title is Monitoring Race and Gender Effects on Word Association Using ERICA, a pilot study. And indeed, there were noticeable patterns when you control for the controllables that demonstrated that there were both race and gender correlations in word association, in the word association data, which by implication suggests that there might be an opportunity to alleviate potential disparities in the verbal sections of standardized tests.
And how did the executives of ETS and ACT react to your findings?
Well, when Professor Hutchinson first reviewed the research with me, he encouraged me to contact the heads of standardized test companies at the time, which I did. I did not get any responses. But when, as a consultant, I had the opportunity to, as you said, address the executives directly, they had no choice other than to respond. And they did so with great interest, but they never asked to see a copy of the thesis.
Okay, well, Daria, thank you so much for joining us. That was really a pleasure, and we really appreciate your insights and look forward to seeing you a couple of times later this month. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.